Let's kick the tires. I'm going to ask Paul Preston to come up here. He's the moderator. Master of Ceremonies. Paul Preston, Agenda 21 Radio.
Well, good evening and welcome. How is the sound system in here?
Real good.
Don't you just love brand new sound systems? How many of you bought a brand new sound system that doesn't work? Raise your hand. Not many. Wow. Anyway, so welcome to our great marijuana debate, battle, whatever you want to call it. What are we calling it? The Great Marijuana Debate. This is certainly something that is raging across the country. Whether to legalize, don't legalize, whatever we're going to do to marijuana or with marijuana. And we're really happy to be able to have this forum tonight so that we can kind of get everything aired out, so to speak. So let me go ahead and run down the format for you so that you know what we're going to be doing. First of all, the debate participants representing Yuba County Measure A, Michelle Parsons. Measure A co-author and founder of Citizens for Solvency. Representing Yuba County Measure B, Mickey Martin. Measure B co-author and author of Medical Marijuana 101 and director of CSPARC. Opposing Yuba County Measure A and B, Buck Weckman. He's the founder of Yuba County PACT. And Roger Morgan, who is director of Take Back America. And our esteemed panel. I'm sorry, I just had to do that. Our esteemed panel, Larry Virga. Raise your hand for Larry. The SBTPP co-founder and retired State of California Data Center Manager. If you want hot data, Larry has it. Thomas Burns. Party Executive Committee, owner of Thomas Burns Plastering of Yuba City, and Elden Fowler, correspondent of the Territorial Dispatch. Welcome, everybody. Okay, let me review. See, I've got a script, and you're asking a radio show host to do a script. Okay, well, it may last for a while. The timekeeper is Larry Mertz. However, Larry has suddenly changed and put on his skirt. It's Danielle.
Hey, Larry.
Hey, listen, you can never trust the script. It says right here, Larry Mertz. Larry, you look great in a dress. Okay, this is what will be happening. As the speakers are speaking, Danielle, we'll hold up 3 signs. The first one, when it's appropriate, is the 30-second sign. Larry, don't coach the sign people over there. We don't need confusion. Okay, the next sign will be 10 seconds. And finally, we get into the Looney Tune territory. That's all, folks. How many of you remember Looney Tunes? Isn't that great? Wish kids had more of that. And adults. After the participants have been introduced by the moderator, me, each side will be given a total of 3 minutes to speak. Now what's going to happen, each table gets 3 minutes. The two of them on each table have to work it out how long they're going to speak, but they're going to be given 3 minutes total. And that's what we'll get into the signage down here. There will be a question and answer period conducted by the panel of 3 representatives from the community, and each side, proponents or opponents, depending upon who the question was directed to, will be given 1 minute to respond. The other side will have 30 seconds for a rebuttal. The panel may ask each side to ask the others questions, of which they will have 1 minute to respond. There will be a 30-second rebuttal. There will also be a question and answer period from the audience, and those supporting Measure A Did it say Measure A on it? Yeah. All right, I hit it right. Measure A supporting will come over here to this side. Measure B, and that sign says Measure B, right?
No, that says no on A and B, and this says yes on A and B.
Yes on A and B and no on?
A and B.
All right, my audience knows more than I do. It says campaign, this is a warning. Campaign speeches from the audience and attacks on the candidates will not be allowed. Please do not assist the candidates with any of the answers. Of course, they're not candidates. You guys running for office? We did that. This is part of the script. Larry, you need to correct this. See, they're not candidates. They're debaters.
American citizens.
And we appreciate them being here. After the question and answer portion of the debate, each side will be given a total of 3 minutes for a closing response. Okay, Larry, turn it over to you.
Thank you. Am I on?
Not very loud. You're on, but not loud. Let's see. Is this one up? Yeah,
Okay,
you're
thank
on.
you, Paul. We're going to go ahead and start for the Measure A, which would be Michelle. It says, one of the oh wait, we're not doing this right, Paul. We need an introduction from these guys and then introduction from these guys.
See, this is script business.
I think you skipped it. You have 3 minutes to be
Joe Carswell is going to rip me after this, so watch it. Okay. On behalf of the Sutter Youth Class, that's the end. Larry, it's not on here. But then, listen, there's going to be 3 minutes given to each one of these tables. We're going to go ahead and start at the far table down there, and then we'll come over here to the other table. There you go, Larry. Thanks.
Hello, everyone hear me? No, all right. I can talk pretty loud. Yeah, we're honored that the Sutter Tea Party decided to have us out to discuss this most important issue. We think it strikes at the core of freedom and public safety, and that it's an issue that, you know, whether or not you use cannabis or choose cannabis as something that might work well for your health issue, you know, it's something that everybody generally knows somebody who's a cannabis user or has a person in their family who, you know, cannabis does work for. And we think it's a great opportunity to have this debate in the open and to discuss these issues and kind of inform and educate the community on what cannabis is and how it helps people, and why it's an important issue for us to have access for our local citizens. We appreciate everybody coming out, and hope that you guys have some great questions for us. We look forward to answering them. We know it's a hot button topic, not just here locally, but across the nation, and that this is an issue that I think is at the forefront of our society, and we have a lot of decisions to make about how we got into this drug war that, you know, has cost us over $1 trillion, and we've locked up 25% of the world's prison population while we only have 5% of the actual population. And how did we get into this mess, and how do we get out of it? So we're here to discuss that issue and hopefully ease the minds of some of the people who may have inhibitions about cannabis and, you know, from what it's been in our society. So thank you all for coming.
Again, thank you for coming. My name is Michelle Parsons. Over the next couple hours, I look forward to explaining Measure A to you and answering any questions that you might have or any concerns, and what the intent of and what the actual ordinance says, and how it's going to solve some of the issues that we have with our current ordinance and the issues that we have in this community with medical cannabis. And hopefully we'll be able to decipher the difference between medical cannabis patients and commercial cultivation, because there's a huge difference, and we need to make sure that we understand the difference. And thank you for having us.
thank you for having me. My name's Buck Weckman, and I'm here because basically I have 5 children and over 20 grandchildren right now. So I'm here opposing Measure A and B, so they are ensured of having a good, safe, wholesome society for them to live in. We're not opposed to a person growing a few plants for their own personal use. We're not. We're here opposing the commercial marijuana industry. Rather than go into a lot, I think I'll just tell you who is, and somewhat, is sitting here beside me. These are the people that are supporting our efforts of no on Measure A and B. We have the Yuba County Sheriff, Yuba County DA, the Chief Probation Officer, the previous Yuba County Health Officer, Joe Cassidy, very well respected. Okay. We got it now? Okay. We have the current and previous Yuba County Superintendent of Schools that support our efforts. The Yuba Sutter Farm Bureau opposes Measures A and B. So in addition to that, we have Soper Whaler Logging Company, one of the oldest companies here in Yuba County, and Senator Jim Nielsen, and Assemblyman James Gallagher, and previous U.S. Congressman Wally Herger are standing with us against Measure A and B. Thank you. I'm Roger Morgan. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Closer. Now? Okay. Hopefully we won't get demerits because maybe we're a tie and we didn't. You get this old, they choke you so. I've been engaged in drug prevention work for about 2 decades, owing to the fact I have 2 stepchildren that got addicted to marijuana then meth at age 12 and 14. So I've seen the transformation of 2 of God's chosen that had every God-given quality in the world. They were pretty, athletic, popular, turned into something despicable. So I am obviously on the other side of this issue from those that think we should grow or disperse medical marijuana. When I have a little more time than 30 seconds, I'll tell you the reality of why marijuana is not medicine. So with that, I'll leave it at this point.
Thank you. We have a couple of questions that we're going to ask in 1 minute response, and there's a 30-second rebuttal. You decide who's going to answer, and you got a minute. You can split a minute if you want, or the rebuttal. Just a quick one here. One of the arguments against Measure A is seriously flawed and will provide a safe harbor for non-medical marijuana, commercial grows, and traffickers to hide in plain sight among those who are truly seriously ill. What's your response to that statement, Michelle?
Thank you. The first thing about that is that it's absolutely and totally not true. If you actually read the ordinance itself, which I have right here, and I'd be happy to show people copies of this afterwards, in this section, right here, it talks specifically about Measure A in being able to, that if a garden is not registered, and by definition, a nuisance can be abated. Those actual articles in there say any violation of this chapter shall be deemed a public nuisance and is subject to any enforcement process authorized by law and outlined in this code. So basically what that means is that there's no enforcement issues. Everyone can go in, the law enforcement can. The complaint-driven mechanism that they're reporting to is only about your neighbors within 600 feet.
Thank you. you have a rebuttal, Roger?
Yeah, I'd like to address that. First off, there's a phrase in their ordinance that says, this will be complaint-driven. So county officials are prohibited from enforcing. Secondly, the 600-foot situation where you can't turn in a complaint. Anyone living further than 600 feet cannot turn in a complaint. So the growers will buy a big piece of property, place the grow in the middle of the property, and no one can complain because it's more than 600 feet.
Thank you. Ask Mickey this, Measure B. What's the estimated potential economic benefit to Yuba County with the passage of Measure B?
You know, an average medical cannabis dispensary in the state of California brings in about $4 million on average in gross revenues. We've allowed for the Board of Supervisors to enact a 4% tax on those gross revenues, as well as hundreds of jobs that will be provided. You know, an average dispensary employs between 20 and 30 people, which brings revenue into the economy locally, as well as people coming in to purchase medical cannabis also use other businesses and services in the county. So, you know, high tide rises all ships. And what has been seen around the state is that medical cannabis dispensaries have been very good for local economies and for other businesses in those areas. And, you know, we believe that it will be an economic benefit for the county and hopefully something that will bring in a lot of revenues.
Do we have a rebuttal?
With alcohol and tobacco, the social costs amount to 10 times as much as the tax revenues. It's no different with marijuana, particularly today's marijuana. When Prop 215 started, the potency of this drug was like 4%. Today, in some forms, it's as high as 96%. It causes an impact on literally all aspects of public service.
Larry, can I have a point of order? Okay. We're getting some harassment from people in the audience with signs. I thought that was something we weren't going to allow.
Yeah. While the debate's going on, could you please keep the signs down and be polite?
Outside.
Well, right now, the free speech is for the people up front to inform the citizens here. You'll have your chance.
Outside, sir.
Yeah, I have a question for Roger. Roger, you're quoted as saying the age limit for medical marijuana usage should be raised from 18 to 21. Yet we hear of young children who've been relieved from seizures. Are you saying we would deny the medical benefits to anyone under 21, even if it results in, indicate a proven beneficial use?
No, I'm not saying that. You have to differentiate between CBD and what is termed medical marijuana. As Dr. Sanjay Gupta pointed out, he calls it medical marijuana. CBD is an isolated component of the plant. It's like saying that we get penicillin from moss, so we should call it medical moss. CBD has shown benefit in helping small children with seizures, but it's not perfect. It worked 39% of the time. 61% of the time it didn't work. It either made things worse, in some cases 2 kids died. But it's important enough that the FDA has put it on a fast track. And if anybody wants CBD today, you can apply to the FDA and get the drug.
I'd ask the person in the back with the glasses to keep the signs down during this portion of the...
Please, no interruptions while the speakers are speaking.
If we have to speak to you again, we'll ask you to leave.
Michelle, do you have a rebuttal? to that?
Yeah, I was actually interested in the comment that of the 30% of it only working, because the truth is that I actually know several children who suffer from seizures. Actually, some of them being in this county, in Yuba County, Sutter County. Another child I'm sure you guys have heard of, his name is Silas. They're working on the campaign No Against W, and 0 seizures from 400 a day to 0, and it did have 1 part THC to 20 parts CBD, because the THC helps the CBDs be absorbed, so its full effect does work more than that.
Real quickly, Sanjay Gupta, in his second episode, which I don't know if you caught that one, talked about the entourage effect, which is whole plant medicine and how the cannabinoids work together.
Thank you. I have a question for Buck. Property owners in Yuba County must pay over $4,000 to have their cases heard before the Board of Supervisors sitting as quasi-judicial panel. The Board of Supervisors makes a determination as to the fines and penalties placed against the property owner for marijuana grows, even when the property owner is unaware. By definition, a judicial panel must be impartial. Do you feel the Board of Supervisor members who wrote the law and need the revenue the law can produce to balance the county's budget can be considered impartial? And would this problem be corrected with the passage of Measure A?
Actually, I don't know of any case where the Board of Supervisors actually broke the law. And the fact that it's necessary to hold landowners to a certain amount of accountability for what happens on their property. The Measure A would exempt the property owners from having any accountability for that. And that is actually the wrong way to go. For instance, we have a person on the panel here that was a grower and is an owner and was just agreed to pay a $6,000 fine last week for growing on her property. So if we place this Measure A into effect, she would have been exempt from that. So it does need some work. I will agree with that we need some refining. And if we ever get away from having to face all these challenges to the law, I think that could be worked out.
Mr. Weckman is correct. I did just have to pay a $6,000 fine, which is insane for 24 CBD plants with no THC. It's providing medicine for over 25 different patients in this county who have Crohn's disease, have cancer, have seizures. It's absolutely unacceptable. And another thing that's unacceptable is landowners who are innocent are being held guilty until proven innocent by our Board of Supervisors right now. And the Board of Supervisors in the county have lost 4 court cases regarding this, and it costs us a lot of money that we can't afford.
Michelle, would you support a modification of the existing Yuba County marijuana ordinance which would provide protection to property owners?
It's also about the property owners. It's about the taxpayers also fronting the bill for this, the $1 million that they spent enforcing this. They do claim that they've recovered some of that money, but they forgot to mention the amount of lawsuits that have been taken off of that, the lawyer bills. The other thing that they mention is they talk about all this property that they have all these liens on. A majority of these properties aren't even worth half of what they're being liened for, so the money doesn't even exist. Meaningless, it takes 5 years to do it. So would I? Yes. But we need to make sure that we have our patients being needed too by growing outside because of the carbon footprint that indoor growing provides.
You guys have a comment on that, rebuttal?
Well, just a quick response. That's what I mentioned earlier. This current ordinance could use some refining, and I think some added protections to the landowner might be appropriate. But again, I've not seen any cases where the county has actually fined a landowner that wasn't aware of what was happening.
Excuse me. This question's for Michelle. Michelle and Mickey. Why do you embrace taxing the marijuana program? I said, why do you embrace taxes on the marijuana?
Well, you know, it's not an ideal situation. Nobody likes to be taxed, but, you know, in order to come to a reality with the large constituents of the voters, you have to have that carrot on the stick that, you know, is going to ensure that, you know, marijuana users are probably about 10 to 15% of your population. We need 50% of people to vote on this for us. So, you know, taxes and revenues are a good way to encourage people to bring it in. I mean, marijuana's here. Nobody's, you know, debating whether or not cannabis exists in our community. But, you know, providing additional revenues on top of the normal 8.75% tax rate is a good way to encourage people that this is going to be something beneficial to the county.
And Measure A doesn't have a tax. It actually collects fees through registration, and by doing that, the actual patients who are registering pay for that, and so it keeps the taxpayer from fronting the bill like they did currently for $1 million.
Any rebuttal?
Yes, the taxes on these type of products just do not cover the cost of the social cost of that expense to it. You want to elaborate on that a little bit, Roger? You talked about it earlier.
I think everywhere they've tried to tax their way out of this, including the state of California, they collect about $100 million a year. None of that comes back to local communities who have had to bear the burden for this problem. You can't tax it enough to even cover the cost of enforcement.
Rather battle lines, just a little bit different here. Just a simple yes or no answer from each of you. Should marijuana be a Class 1 scheduled drug, yes or no?
Absolutely not. 80% of the public in this country know that it has medical value, and it's about time that our government starts taking some research.
It should be descheduled in all reality.
Descheduled, okay. Mr. Morgan, your position?
Sorry, the question is...
Should marijuana be a Class 1 scheduled drug, yes or no?
Marijuana is a Schedule 1 drug, correctly stated, because it has no accepted medical use. After
Please, can you let the people speak?
Let me preface this for all you guys.
Yeah, I just wanted a yes or no on this. We can go into this later if you'd like, but just a yes or no.
Okay. Let me just say that I believe that...
Yes or no?
The moderator will take care of it.
It's a yes or no question. It's a yes or no question.
That's a yes or no question. If I understand the question, it should not be a Schedule. It should be a Schedule 1 drug.
Okay, thank you. Buck?
You know, I don't have enough knowledge to give you an answer one way or another on that. But two things, Elden. We're having a little difficult time hearing you from this direction.
Okay, I think you answered the question. You don't know whether...
For that specific question, I would not have enough information to give you an answer.
Thank you. And this goes to all of you also. What specific experiences, qualifications, degrees, etc., qualify you to make decisions about medical marijuana? And you can start with Michelle.
I'm sick. I broke my neck at the fire department on duty, and after that I was given pain medication and huge amounts of antibiotics and had a bunch of stomach problems and was actually then diagnosed with Crohn's disease. They wanted me to take steroids and Humira. The side effects, which is renal failure, cancer, kidney failure, I chose that wasn't an option. I looked on the internet and found a bunch of studies from Israel about children being cured with Crohn's disease and other patients. I said, hey, no one's ever died from it in the history of mankind. I might as well try it. So I started learning about CBD plants, and it's the reason I'm here. Otherwise, I spent half of my life in bed. It saved my life.
At the age of 13, I was diagnosed with ADHD and put on a very dangerous drug called Ritalin. Some couple years later, I found out that cannabis was a great alternative for me and much far less dangerous. I've been advocating and working to develop the cannabis industry for about 20 years now. I wrote a book called Medical Marijuana 101, which is kind of a medical marijuana for dummies book, good for people to understand. And I've developed a lot of self-regulatory models in absence of state regulations. I've worked with the state of California, cities and states all across the nation to develop good ways of going about bringing medical marijuana back into our society, and I'm very passionate about the subject and very knowledgeable.
I deal with people that have been harmed by marijuana, just like they would by any other drug that was misused. I think if you're going to call it medicine, then you have to follow the Hippocratic Oath that says do no harm. There's a website, if you care to look at it, called Mom Strong, where mothers have lost their kids to suicide because of the psychoactive effect of the high THC marijuana. And it's not what Michelle is talking about, which is CBD. When you get THC at 60, 70, 80, 96% from River City, Phoenix dispensary in Sacramento, that's not medicine, that's a drug. The way it's packaged and labeled is supposed to attract children, and it has caused numerous suicides and violent acts. It's not medicine, it's a potentially a lethal drug.
Show me the Bible.
The debate whether it is actually medicine or not is ongoing. Okay, most of your health groups recommend more study on the subject. Now, let me read you something from the American Academy of Pediatrics, where they affirm their opposition to legalizing marijuana for recreational or medical use. We know marijuana can be very harmful to the adolescent health and development. Making it more available to adults, even if restrictions are in place, will increase the access for teens. Just the campaigns to legalize marijuana can have an effect of persuading adolescents that marijuana is not dangerous, which can have a devastating impact on their lifelong health and development.
Thank you. Mr. Morgan, you mentioned the Hippocratic Oath. As part of an article I'm working on for the Territorial Dispatch, several elected government officials from the Yuba County side of the river and we visited a dispensary in Sacramento. And there we found that a number of respected doctors for a number of respected HMOs are writing recommendations that are being serviced by that dispensary. Why would a doctor write a recommendation if it was not medically beneficial?
Money. We've had people go into doctors' offices asking for a recommendation. The record was it took 42 seconds to get one, and the doctor was on Skype, living in North Las Vegas. So I'm not saying that marijuana doesn't have benefits to some people. I just say it's not medicine. We all take alternate medications on occasion because we prefer it. But the problem is we call it medical marijuana. When doctors prescribe this, it's not because they really believe it's good for people. Most of the recommendations have been written by very few doctors.
Let me read this to you then. just so that you're aware of it. This is from a Kaiser Permanente website. Marijuana is a drug that is made up of the leaves and flowers and buds of the hemp plant. Cannabis sativa. Medical marijuana is in the use of this drug to help treat symptoms like pain, muscle stiffness, spasticity, nausea, and lack of appetite. It may be used by people who have conditions like cancer, AIDS, or multiple sclerosis. If you think you might want to try medical marijuana, talk to your doctor. Now that's from a Kaiser website. So I question why a doctor that works for an HMO would write a prescription for money. I don't understand that.
They just write recommendations, not prescriptions, because it's not a legitimate medicine. But I would tell you that almost every medical association in America opposes marijuana to be used as medicine. Sorry, but they do. And the question of whether it should be a Schedule I drug, the problem is you don't know what you're calling medical marijuana. Like River City, Phoenix, the products vary from edibles to vaping to smoking. The potency goes from 14% to 96%. To have a legitimate medicine, it has to be standardized, known compounds, known potency, has to be reproducible in a consistent manner. There is a legal form of marijuana called Marinol, been on the market since 1983.
I don't mean to keep coming back to you, but we're on that subject. Along those lines, the country of Israel is taking a much more progressive stance on medical marijuana. Israel's fast-growing cannabis industry has high hopes for a new market, namely exports of medical marijuana to America. Israel is already a leading supplier of pharmaceuticals to the U.S. Now its government, scientists, and companies are working together to turn a once illicit drug into a booming new medical business. Backed by the government, scientists are working on developing specific plans for specific treatments. Why can't we do that in this country, in this debate? If there's a medical benefit, let's research it. If there isn't, let's get rid of it. Why can't we do that?
We have the FDA, which isn't perfect, but it's the gold standard for the world. There is an expert in Israel that has been experimenting with marijuana for a long time. Again, I'm not saying that we should ever stop the scientific research on using this. I do believe that CBD has merit in some cases. I'm not going to tell Montel Williams that he shouldn't use cannabis because it apparently helps his MS. What I believe we have to do in California and the nation is say, okay, let's make it available, but let's get the profit out of this, because most of it is manufactured not as medicine, it's manufactured for money. We have 50,000 cultivation sites in California supplying 60% of the U.S. market for recreational pot. We're growing it as medicine and we're destroying our state, along with the kids in it.
Yes, I feel like I'm debating Joe McCarthy up here. Have you no decency, sir? I mean, we've been debating for less than a half hour and you've told no less than 30 lies. The American Medical Association, the American College of Physicians, the American Nurses Association, there are numerous, Veterans for Medical Access. There's the California Nurses Association. They've all come out and said that medical marijuana definitely has medical benefits. I mean, I can't believe we're still debating this in this day and age. And to have people up here blatantly lie about the medical efficacy of cannabis is offensive. And I hope...
Let me interrupt here for a second. We have a little bit of a sound issue, and we're going to take about a 1-minute break right now so that we can get all of the sound things taken care of, because some of the questions and so on can't be heard back over in this area, so we're trying to correct that. So We're going to take about a 1 minute. Let's make it 2. Now let's make it 3.
I've even had my cousin.
Okay, let's go ahead and take our sons and let's get started.
And I got hit by a driver.
Elden, I believe you were asking questions last. And so we get everybody seated. You can go ahead and start. Let's go, guys. Take a seat. Hello? Am I turned on? Hey guys, I'm not turned on. I think they can hear me. Just turn up the volume. Pump up the volume. Can you guys hear me right now?
Yeah.
Can we do sound check with Elden?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Oh yeah. And over here, Michelle?
Hello?
Mickey?
Check 1, 2, check 1.
I like doing this kind of stuff. Roger?
Hello.
And John?
No, 1, 2, 3.
Okay. And let me kind of give you guys some directions on these. When one is on, the other one needs to be off. Okay, so if somebody else is speaking at your table, make sure yours is off, because then we start getting the sound effects and all that stuff. Also, everybody gets 1 minute to respond to the questions and 30 seconds as a rebuttal. So we're going to be going along that line, so stick with it. Elden, you're up.
Okay, thank you. One of the valid arguments against Measure B. Oh, I'm sorry.
We're talking about, you were asking about the medical portion, and what I wanted to talk about is that there's lots of groups that believe that there's medical marijuana. The Cancer Institute, of course, Kaiser Permanente, California Family Physicians, California Nurses Association, the AIDS Council, California Medical Group, American Pharmacists, Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, Institute of Medicine. But the best thing about Measure A is we are talking about medical cannabis. We're not talking about commercial growing. Commercial growing is more than 100 plants. Collective growing for 60 plants, like on what we're talking about on 20 acres, is for medical use only.
Measure B. One of the valid arguments against Measure B states, Measure B is so poorly written that it does not provide even the minimum protection needed to protect marijuana patients or to ensure that dispensaries aren't a front for commercial marijuana profiteers. How do you respond to that statement?
Actually, Measure B, the Patients Access to Regulated Medical Cannabis Act, has been thoroughly vetted by a number of legal scholars and professionals, including Yuba County's council, who issued a fair title and summary for the initiative that spelled out several protections contained in the language. The hyperbolic statement alluding that dispensaries are a front for commercial marijuana profiteers just shows how desperate and effective this argument against really is. Dispensaries are retail storefronts where qualified patients can access safe and effective medicine, and by nature are commercial entities, the same as Walgreens or other providers of medicine. It makes little sense why they would choose to attack the commercial nature of the business model. It is no wonder the county continues to struggle with budget shortfalls as they are seemingly unfriendly to new business opportunities, such as dispensaries.
Rebuttal.
Okay, the proponents of Measure B actually took the arguments against that to court. And they claim that 15 articles that were said in the arguments against it was not correct. Well, the judge found otherwise. He did find one small minor alteration that he did to it. But in fact, what they're relying upon is a law that won't become into effect until 2018, and there's no assurance that it will actually go. They've already adjusted one portion of it. They threw out the date to the counties to adopt certain regulations, so there's no guarantee.
Thank you. Measure A. Yuba County had a workable court-mandated marijuana ordinance before enacting the current ordinance. The problem associated with the prior ordinance stemmed from a lack of enforcement. Now the county seems reaping millions of dollars in penalties and assessments off of the backs of property owners to cover the cost of enforcement. How would Measure A change that?
Measure A is a complete and total hybrid of those two systems. It has outdoor growing, but of course the plant counts have been cut in half. The county currently allows 12 plants indoors. The old ordinance had 99. This plant count is 60, but it allows it outdoors. But it did fail, and the reason that it did fail is that there was no money provided. There was no enforcement. Our sheriff's department was down 26 positions. Our DA budget was over half at that time because of the recession. And if we provide the money for enforcement by collecting fees off of those plants, we can continue the same type of enforcement that we have right now and more, because we're actually going to be able to give money through the general budget to the sheriff's department, which he didn't get any of the money that has been used, $1 million, directly to his budget. So this would actually fix those problems, and it's a happy medium of both ordinances. It's a great solution for Yuba County and its patients.
Could you reset my time? I was interrupted with applause there. So. You know, there's all kinds of disinformation being spread by the proponents of Measure A. For one thing, they claim that the fees will bring in $1 million. Well, I don't know where they got the math, because we did the math. And depending on whether you have a large landowner or a small landowner, how many plants would it take to bring in $1 million that they're claiming? Well, it would take 13 square miles of Yuba County land to bring in that much revenue that they claim that's the $1 million. So their math is just faulted, and the monies that they talk about won't come in.
Buck, I'd like to go back to a statement from you, or get a statement from you. Would you support modification in the existing Yuba County Mayor ordinance, which would provide protection to property owners? I believe you said earlier that you thought there should be or could be some changes in that regard. You also mentioned 2 plants. Do you have a plant count in mind for a new ordinance or a change in the existing ordinance?
Repeat that last part of the question.
Do you have a plant count in mind for a change in the ordinance or a new ordinance? In other words, you mentioned a plant count.
I think there is room for discussion with reasonable people to look at the existing ordinance. As up to this date, we've never had any reasonable discussion from the other side. They've stuck to this exorbitant amount of 60 plants and further regulations that protect, the commercial, the illegal owner and grower. So I think there's room for negotiations if and when the person that just wants to grow for medical marijuana can separate themselves from the commercial marijuana grower, the person that's in it for money. Because right now they are being used as pawns for the individuals to come in and grow at their own free will. And until they separate themselves and we have reasonable people to talk about reasonable adjustments, it just won't happen. But I'm open to that, certainly.
Thank you. Go ahead.
There has been reasonable people. I can tell you that I sat on the ad hoc committee meetings with the Board of Supervisors, and I feel myself to be pretty reasonable and respectful. And the truth is that when in those meetings, John Nicoletti, County Council, everyone, and the Lieutenant Sheriff all told us, hey, we're not in any hurry to find this. We're going to find a solution. And 1 week later, they passed an urgency ordinance that blocked a referendum by selling water that they said we didn't have. That's not happening. We haven't had the opportunity to have a common ground and have any meetings.
One last question for me, and then we'll go back to Paul, I believe, and for you to wind up. And this goes to all of you. Have you toured a licensed medical marijuana dispensary? And if so, what conclusions did you draw from your visit? And we can start wherever you want to start.
Not only have I toured them, I've actually helped develop and open several dispensaries throughout the state of California. And I can tell you, they're some of the most highly regulated businesses in the industry. They have better security than most banks. They carry less inventory than your local Target. They have less cash on hand than the grocery store. And there's been very little crime associated with medical cannabis dispensary. They also provide a great deal of community services, including benefits for social welfare. They donate a lot of money. There was a dispensary I worked with in Oakland that did a gun buyback program. And, these are really good businesses that provide good paying jobs, often union jobs. The United Food and Commercial Workers Union is a big supporter of the medical cannabis industry. And, these businesses are actually very safe. In Oakland, they found that areas around dispensary crime has dropped about 30%.
In all of the dispensaries that you've shopped in or opened, have you ever communicated the side effects of marijuana? Have you ever told people that if you're 25 or less and your brain isn't fully developed, that marijuana can cause permanent structural and chemical changes in the brain?
Actually, I've developed a lot of materials for dispensaries that talk about sensible use and responsible use, but those are basically not founded facts that you're, once again...
You guys have the floor. What's the order going on?
I need to go next. Whatever, you want to go first, Bob? Doesn't matter.
That's fine. Go ahead.
Yes, I've been to a dispensary. Prior to cultivating, I actually had to buy my CBD medication, and unfortunately, I had to drive to Sacramento or San Francisco to get 200 milligrams of CBDs, 100 every day, 200 milligrams of CBDs. It was $1,000 a month for my family, which luckily I'm in the situation where my husband and I can afford that. But most people in this community are not in this situation to be able to afford that, and hence the reason why we need people to be able to cultivate their own medication. And growing indoors is very expensive. To set up a situation like you're talking about with 12 plants is over $30,000 in equipment. And I know this because the co-author of this owns a grow store, and we know how much it costs. So it makes it absolutely unfeasible for some people to do that, but the dispensaries are really nice if you can afford that.
Okay, we just have to identify some misinformation that's being given. I heard some information here that I got off the internet last night with just very little effort. It says here, free delivery to Yuba City. That happens to be the top shelf collected grow. Also, the Yuba County Patients Alliance has free delivery here to Marysville. So the fact that they have to drive a long ways to get a material is just not the case. We also need to know what they're selling in these stores. Okay, 10 seconds, all I got left? Well, part of it is marijuana chocolate brownies, peanut butter cookie, snickerdoodle cookie, farm caramels, Inca, all packaged to be favorable to children. So that's what we have to watch out for.
Elden, are you done, Elden?
Yeah, I think there was a question there. Have you toured the dispensary?
I've not actually toured a dispensary. I've watched videos of them. I've watched information where the dispensaries give people the opportunity to get their script, which is, and they advertise there how easy it is to come in. They don't even see the doctor. They just sit down in front of a video camera then the doctor, whoever it is, gives them their script. So, no, I have not toured one. And since you asked me another question too, I guess what I would say is, you know, there probably are some places where a dispensary and the armed guards do create an atmosphere that's a little bit safer. You'll probably find them in Oakland, okay? But in this country here, we just are not down to that level where we have to rely on the security guard from a dispensary to provide us extra protection. We already have that situation.
I've got one question for Michelle. Thank you. Have you come up with a solution for the situation where people are going in and robbing other people's grows? What's your thoughts on that? How do you solve that solution? That problem?
Well, I don't think it's just cannabis. I think there's a lot of people who rob a lot of people's stuff. I mean, we're not going to tell somebody they can't own a BMW because it's too nice of a car and people want to steal it. That's just not the way we live in our society. One of the reasons marijuana is a high value target is because of the prohibition of it, and you know, black market creates increased prices, which leads to people who would like to steal that the same as they would like to steal your BMW. But I mean, we can't tell somebody no, you can't go buy a gold Rolex because people want to steal it. That's just not how we operate in our society.
So I want to hear Michelle's.
The biggest thing you need to understand with Measure A is if you can see the garden, it is not compliant and it is completely enforceable by the ordinance in the section that I read you. It does not limit the county enforcement, or does it limit county sheriff's department. And there's also another section regarding that. And so that's the thing that we need to understand, is that if a garden can be seen with Measure A, it is not compliant, and therefore it will be enforced, and we'll give the money through registration and collecting fees to enforcement rather than the taxpayers fronting the money and innocent property owners to deal with that enforcement. If anything, our enforcement will go up because the money will actually go to the sheriff's department to deal with illegal grows and not just through code enforcement.
Well, I have a hard time accepting that type of statement from somebody that just blatantly ignored the law some time ago and grew 26 plants. So there seems to be, some need for consistency. Okay, we've had in the last month a murder, a shooting, okay, all related to marijuana. We've had home invasion robberies in Brownsville, in Olivehurst, and we've had, even a garden supply store in Browns Valley knocked over for garden supplies related to marijuana. So anyway, that's all, folks.
We're going to go ahead and turn it back over to the world famous Paul Preston and allow some questions between you two. Ask each other some questions. So, Paul?
As Larry said, we're going to allow you guys to talk amongst yourself and ask some questions and get some responses. And we'll go ahead and start with this table here, and you can start firing a question over there. We'll get some dialogue going on. What's the time limit on this, Larry? What's the time limit for the answer? A minute? Minute and 30. Minute and 30 rebuttal. So let's go ahead, Buck or Roger.
Okay, this question will be for, thank you. This question will be for Mr. Martin. Your source of funding to start off your campaign was $10,000 from a limited partnership out of Sacramento, an ABS law group out of Sacramento, and also another $5,000 from a Richmond organization located there. And then a gentleman in Sacramento also paid over $5,000 for your billboards. So I'd like to know who the source of this funding is, and why would these people from out of the area be willing to give you $20,000 for your campaign?
MMC Advisors out of Richmond stands for Mickey Martin Consulting, so that would be me giving my own money. The other groups are located are dispensary groups that see a great deal of patients out of Yuba County. When you look at by zip code, who's traveling from out of town to visit dispensaries in Sacramento, what we found was that a large majority of them were from Yuba County and the surrounding areas. And the groups that we're working with would like to be able to serve those patients in the area where they live.
Okay, do I get a rebuttal on that? Yeah, well, I understand why they're investing here. It's all in the money. We also need to look at the truth of what's
What do you have
happening.
against money?
Pardon me, I thought I got to speak without interruption. Am I okay? Yeah. Okay, I'm okay. Give me a couple seconds for the interruption, okay? And also, last April, when you came to this county and presented the idea to have dispensaries, you identified yourself as community liaison with River City Phoenix, which is the pot dispensary in Sacramento. Suddenly that's all went away. We're now an author of a book and some other things. So what are we trying to cover up here? What really is this all about? Well, it's about the money.
No, I'm still affiliated with River City Phoenix, and I proudly do that. And they've actually give over $1 million a year to local community efforts.
You know, I've looked at River City Phoenix website a lot, and I'm dealing with the pharmacy board in California, and it's a classic example of River City Phoenix of products that are being sold in quantities and with consistency that is potentially lethal. For example, a brownie that is packaged and says this is 16 servings, and it's 270 times the legal limit in milligrams for Marinol, the legal drug. I don't know many people that can take one bite of a brownie and then set it down on the counter and not expose others to doing the same thing, or children. People in Colorado have died from this. River City Phoenix should be shut down, to be honest, and probably the other 29
Can we get a
dispensaries in
question, Roger?
Sacramento as well.
What's the question?
What's my question?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I was
Oh,
commenting.
no.
Okay, well, I have a question of Michelle. On your,
But to be clear, you're stating that their medicine is too effective. You're stating that their medicine is too effective, that they, that instead of having to eat a large brownie to get the medicine they only need a small portion of a brownie to find the medical relief that they seek.
well, my question is, how do you take one bite of a brownie and then what do you do with the rest of it? A guy in Colorado, as a case in point, several cases.
Medical marijuana's been legal for 20 years, and we had a guy in Colorado pointing in.
Your medical marijuana hasn't been around for 20 years.
1996.
Let's hold it up here, and Larry, you want to go ahead, direct the question. I think the table over here gets the question.
Okay, Michelle, Mickey, you're up. Ask some questions. One each.
At the beginning of we asked for the veterans to stand up, and we all honored their service to this community. And marijuana has proven to be one of the most effective natural treatments for post-traumatic stress disorder for people who fought overseas. So I would like to ask you, gentlemen, how you can look at a person who's faced battle in Afghanistan or Iraq or elsewhere, who suffers from PTSD, finds relief from medical cannabis, and tell them that, sorry, because your 12 and 14-year-old kid got hooked on meth, that you don't want them to have relief to their medicine. How do you justify that?
Number one, the jury's still out on whether it's good or bad for post-traumatic stress syndrome. You can look at Eddie Lee Roth, who shot Chris Kyle, the American sniper. Okay, he used pot all morning. He was suffering from post-traumatic stress syndrome. After trying to help this guy, they go to a gun range and then he kills 2 people. Is that good or bad? You're trying to play doctor when you don't have the scientific capability of doing that. There's people looking at it.
Actually, I work with thousands of veterans.
Let him answer the question.
You have 30 seconds. We'll run back.
Just a point of clarification. Michelle, when you talk about growing 60 plants, are you talking about growing CBD? Because CBD has been genetically bred out of what they're selling in California.
Please let the panel discuss.
So he's not going to answer my question about how you justify that to veterans?
I think he already answered the question. The question is not directed at Michelle.
You have a rebuttal? You can ask him.
Go ahead, Michelle.
Over there or over here?
Real quick, okay, so I have you telling me to do that, and Larry, you telling me to do something different. What would?
Don't follow my directions, so go ahead.
Oh, okay. So, what was your question? I'm sorry.
The question is, you're talking about CBD, and you're the author of Prop A, right?
Yes, Measure
You're
A.
talking about growing marijuana that's high in CBD and low in THC?
That's up to the grower. Depending upon what relief and what medications and what illnesses that people have, that will be their choice. My personal situation is CBD plants. What Mr. Weckman keeps referring to is that he has a hard time listening to someone who had a fine. I did that for a really good reason, so I don't spend half my life in bed, and my dear friend with stage 4 breast cancer doesn't die. And so there's very specific instances, but there are a lot of people who do grow CBDs. I actually know, probably looking in the audience, 15 growers in here that specifically grow only CBD strains.
Well, hats off to them. The problem is when you talk about 60 plants not being commercial, my understanding is there's 1,200 joints per pound in marijuana. You're an expert on it, Mickey, I'm not. And you can grow 1 to 5 pounds of marijuana per plant. If you do the math, you're talking about something between 72,000 and 350,000 joints. That's commercial.
So actually, most people who use marijuana for medical purposes, it actually doesn't have to do with smoking joints. It actually has to do with, like for me, I actually don't smoke joints. I juice plant material and drink it like you drink carrots or oranges or apples or anything else. Most people actually use the oil of that to get the higher milligrams of CBDs. They also use edibles like you're talking about. Those are cancer patients who can't eat during chemotherapy, and it has a lot to do with their appetite. And those are some of the things that sound good to them when they don't eat anything else. So that's
Thank you very
the purpose.
much. That's all, folks. Sorry. I believe you guys have a question. Let's go ahead and ask more questions.
Buck, do you realize that growers who don't own their property in Yuba County, over 20 of them right now, are being punished for people cultivating on their properties, that the county has lost 4 lawsuits? Do you realize that that's unconstitutional for holding someone responsible for the actions of others, and that those people are having to spend over $4,000 to meet the Board of Supervisors with legal representation is another $5,000? Do you think that most people have $10,000 to spend to prove that they're innocent because they're being charged being guilty against an unconstitutional measure or initiative that we currently have?
Well, first off, can we hear me now? Okay. The number of people using medical marijuana guys as give them the ability to get to marijuana is just overwhelming. Okay, so I question your first premise there. There's some information from a dispensary that was raided in Chico where they had over 4,000 scripts on hand. Okay, examination of those scripts So it's clear, at least in that instance, that there's a scam going on. Okay, and I guess I'm going to run out of time to give the rest of the answers.
I'm a little confused, and I'd be happy to give you my extra 30 seconds for you to answer my question.
Yeah.
I'm happy to give it to you, because I'd actually like you to explain to me how you think that that's okay, that 4 property owners have already won lawsuits at taxpayers' expense. How do you feel that there's several more coming, up to 20 lawsuits right now that are being filed by innocent property owners because Roberto Marquez is winning the county 4-0 with that, because this is unconstitutional for property owners to be held responsible for the actions of their tenants.
Thank you, Michelle.
What kind of time frame are we working on here? 30 seconds. Well, first off, simply because they weren't held in court responsible for that doesn't mean they weren't doing it. Okay, we know that often in court, what's the truth is not necessarily what is the results. Okay, and I'm not sure, I have not seen the figures you're talking about. And let's take a look at the slumlord that trashes a house and leaves it. They're held responsible for that activity. There's no difference between marijuana. The landowner has responsibility for what goes on in their property. And like I said before, I'm willing to look at some type of adjustment to the law to give some additional review process or whatever. But the cases that I've seen, that landowners definitely knew what was going on, like yourself, and just ignored the law. And so they need to be held responsible.
Yeah, your table has one more question.
One more question?
Ask the one again that he won't answer.
When the war on drugs was created by Richard Nixon in 1971, it was the conservatives who were outraged. It was conservative values that didn't understand how the government could interfere with what a person can and can't put in their bodies. And to take it one step further, as far as medicine goes, why do you think that you have the right to tell your neighbors and family and friends what they can and cannot use to make themselves feel better?
I think the answer is that it has to be in the absence of harm to others. The problem is you can't put a drug in your system without having some impact. Marijuana, for example, is fat soluble. It stays in the body and the brain for a month. Drug impairment is now on the same level as alcohol in terms of impairing driving. The death rate has doubled. It has doubled in California because of marijuana impairment, as it has in Colorado, Washington, and every place else. So if you can do it, you can't even sit in your house and have marijuana in the evening without having an impact on your brain for the next 30 days. And every time you use more of it, it gets worse. And maybe you can develop a tolerance, but for most people, it causes a dangerous situation.
So facts mean absolutely nothing.
He had 10 more seconds left. Are you done, Roger?
I'm done.
Okay.
Traffic fatality rates are the lowest in history from marijuana in the state of Washington. Fatalities dropped from 6% in 2012 to 2013. Arrests for impaired driving for DUI in Washington decreased 12% from 2012 to 2013. You just can't make up your own facts, sir. I'm sorry. It doesn't serve your purpose or anyone else's purpose for you to blatantly lie.
Yes.
As a matter of principle, I don't lie to anybody, and you may have a different set of facts than I have, but I would probably bet you that I've spent more time in the cave studying research on marijuana than you have. In fact, most people on Earth. And even going back to the point where marijuana was 0.5 to 2%, it still had many adverse impacts on people. It causes birth defects. Today's problem, it causes psychotic breaks, it causes mental illness, it causes cardiac.
That's it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Go ahead, Doug.
I think Roger's right. It depends on which facts you're using. Okay. I have here a letter from Thomas J. Gorman, director of Rocky Mountain area HIDTA. That's the high intensity drug area. Okay. Here's a comment that he just recently made. This is about Colorado. In only 2 years, marijuana-related traffic fatalities are up 17%. Emergency room rates are up 48%. Hospitalization rates are up 32%. All age group marijuana, okay, I'm done. I'll abide by the rules.
Questions from this table?
Well, if that was that a question that he was asking us?
No, he was making he was following up on a comment. So, go ahead, Roger or Buck, you have a question for the other table?
This is a question for Mr. Martin, author of Measure B concerning dispensaries. Okay. The dispensary ordinance that Marysville just adopted that allows for 2 dispensaries in Marysville has a vast number of protections as far as security, as far as testing the material and so forth. Measure B has nothing in that to cover that. So do you have an answer to that?
That is untrue, and Measure B requires that a detailed security plan be submitted with the application.
One more question from this
I guess what you're saying is, and the same as the other arguments that you made, is that you don't trust the people who run the county to properly regulate and implement the program as it's implemented, which is, I don't know why you don't like the people who work for the county, but I think that they're pretty competent folks over there who are capable of implementing a program and assuring that a security plan is up to par and protects public safety.
I guess I saw nothing in Measure B that would require that.
Okay. Let's go ahead.
Would you like me to read it to you?
Let's go ahead and Roger, you have another question. And then when you come to this table, you have 2 questions. Okay? After Roger asks his question. And then we're going to get your question. Won't that be fun?
The city of Sacramento, with 30 licensed dispensaries, has just got the award for the highest increase in violent crime in the United States. It's up 24%. 59% of the people arrested in Sacramento test positive for marijuana, 83% for all drugs. So if you expand the use of marijuana in Yuba County, do you see an increase in crime?
I'm baffled that you would consider marijuana to be something that causes violent crime. Now I've heard the stereotypes of it being making people lazy and they sit on their couch, but I've never heard of anybody say that marijuana makes people enraged and participate in violent crime. I think that is just absolutely absurd that we're even having that conversation.
Related to that, I'm interested because I have a source right here from the Washington Post that says the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and it talks about all the different crime rates, and it talks about that, and it says as marijuana possession goes up, violent crime goes down. I also have a study right here from the Denver Police Department that proves when they had legalization that burglary, robbery, criminal mischief, stolen property all went down.
Thank you very much. Over here, and then we'll open it up to the audience.
Buck, as a conservative, how do you justify using 100% of taxpayer-funded resources to enforce medical cannabis when there are so many other issues in our county that we could use it for, like homelessness, the fact that 3 of our schools in Yuba County, their wells don't qualify where our children can drink from them. I'm wondering how you can justify that amount of money when we have so many other things, when Measure A gives a solution to that, where it allows the grower to pay for the enforcement through registration and doesn't impact every taxpayer of the county.
First off, you need to have a little understanding of our tax system. The schools are paid for out of a completely different fund than the funds that you're talking about, the general fund here in the county. So there is no relationship between this marijuana and the schools. I'll let applause throw me off track here. It cost me time. So, what was your question again? Oh, where we spend the money, correct? Where we spend the money. Okay. Well, I've already showed you that the $1 million you project that we will get just won't happen. And plus, I'm only 30 seconds, okay. Plus, you have written into your ordinance that if and when the state of California charges a fee for you to get a state permit for this operation, that amount of money will come out of this county portion of the fee. Okay, and plus, what about the fees from the Water Quality Control Board, which are either $1,000 to $10,000? So in reality, we'll get nothing based upon what your ordinance says.
One more question over here. Rebuttal? Okay.
Actually, the Water Board has nothing to do with this. The other thing is that the county fees, you're right, Buck, they will disappear in 2 years, but what it does for the next 2 years is it guarantees that we don't spend $2 million of 100% taxpayer-funded money like we're doing right now. But what it doesn't say in Measure A that you're forgetting to tell everybody is that nowhere does it say that they can't continue those fees once the state decides to have a registration program.
Your table has one more question.
We have one more question.
And either of you can answer this. I know that both of you must believe in property rights. I know that you guys believe in constitutional rights for a state to decide by voting that something should be protected. So why do you support a current ordinance that allows innocent property owners to be fined? And why are you supporting an ordinance that does not support the voters of 1996 and Prop 215?
I think you have to look at federal law. I know you're probably not accepting of the fact that the federal law says that marijuana is an illicit drug. Whether you believe it should be or not is another question. But it's a question of which law trumps. Federal law trumps state law. There's been no enforcement for the last 7 years, which is why this is running wild as it is now. But I think what you've overlooked is the fact that marijuana is a causal factor in human cost. And when I've listened to a lot of people in Yuba County that have gone out and bought guns to protect themselves because of the influx of people that come in to grow because they can, and they don't like the stench. You can't sleep with your window open because it smells like a skunk. And so if you have a diminishing real estate value for the whole county because of this, I think will overshadow any income you think you're going to get.
30 seconds.
It always amazes me when conservatives want state rights on some issues, federal rights on other issues. This is definitely a states' rights issues. And also, the federal government on August 23rd of 2013 issued a memo from the the U.S. Department of Justice that says states who implement their own programs have a right to do so without using federal enforcement as long as they meet 8 enforcement requirements, and they spelled it out very clearly. So it amazes me that when you want to turn on states' rights, you turn it on. When you want to turn on, the federal trumps everything, then you turn that on. It makes no sense to me. But
Okay, thank you for those, for both tables and all 4 of you. Thank you very much. We're now going to hear from the audience, and let's see if I can get the directions right here. We have 2 microphones. Are they turned on? Number 1. And you're invited to come up here, and over on the left-hand side, let's see if I got it right here, we have those that are going to be, measure A and B will be lined up at the left of the audience. Is that right?
Yes over here, and that's no over there.
There you go. Yes over here and no over there. So we'll go ahead and start with yes here as a question. There's no campaigning because nobody's running for elected office right now. We're just trying to get information out so that you all can hear it. And we appreciate the audience's attention to all this, and we're doing it quite well. So let's go ahead and this is yes and this is no. Go ahead.
I have a real question with the people that are anti-Measure A, and that is that I don't understand how property rights went away just because we're talking about marijuana. I know one thing is for certain, and that is if I have a piece of property, I want to do with it what I damn well please.
And your question?
If I want to rent a piece of property, Mr. Weckman, if I want to rent a piece of property to someone, and that person winds up committing a crime,
Yeah, speaking
am I a de facto criminal? Please answer that question.
Thank you for your question, Mr. Weckman. Thank you.
Without knowing all the circumstances, I don't think I can answer that correctly, but a landowner is responsible to a great degree on what happens on his property. To a landowner to be irresponsible and allow someone go on there to set out poisons that poison animals in the woods, and put out pesticides and other herbicides that destroy the land and grade without any consideration for what happens downstream, okay? And anyone that has lived next to a person that is a grower, in almost all cases, will have an entirely different opinion than what you have. So whether the person is a criminal or not, I can't say that. I'm not a lawyer. But the landowner is responsible to some degree on what happens in their property. Yes, they are.
California tenant law.
Excuse me. You've asked your question. Thank you very much.
I don't
Next
agree, but
no. Thank you. Next question.
I can't hear you.
You need to speak in the microphone. Yeah.
On the answer to the landlord thing, it's in the California landlord.
Can we have your question, please? We need your question.
Okay. The question is to Mickey. Mickey, you said there's no killings at dispensaries. What about Bakersfield, San Diego, LA, San Bernardino? Killings at all those dispensaries, and those were workers and security guards. What are you sitting there telling that lie when it's not true? This is just in California, not the
Thank you.
other states.
Thank you for your question. Go ahead, Mickey. You can answer.
I'm sure there has been an isolated incident, just as, I'm sure there's been a jack-in-the-box worker who's been murdered in the line of duty before. And that's a tragedy, and it would be sad that you would use something like that to make your point as an anti-cannabis thing versus an anti-crime thing. Crime is a terrible thing. People being hurt and murdered and things like that. But medical cannabis is a business like any other. And when there's business and revenues and things involved, there certainly is going to be crime. But by far, medical cannabis dispensaries have proven to be far safer than other businesses in the community due to their increased level and requirements of security. Now, I've gone back and forth with you, and I sympathize deeply with you for the tragedy that's happened with your family and drugs and what you revert back to marijuana. But that's unfair to take an isolated incident and act as if that is the norm for this entire community, and I don't appreciate it.
Thank you, Mickey. Thank you. Thank you. Next question over here on this side.
Yes, my question is for Mr.
repeat your question, please?
Where will I get the amount? If 12 plants is my limit, on 5 acres that I live with no neighbors, where will I get the money for the rest of the plants that I need to make the oil for my husband if I can't make it?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Mr. Weckman?
Where will I get it?
Clarifying question, are you talking about honey oil?
No. Actually, I make it with coconut oil. It is not honey oil. You can infuse honey, you can infuse coconut oil, you can infuse olive oil.
I think he's talking about butane honey oil. Okay,
Well, that was my question. Is she making an illegal product like butane honey oil?
No, I'm not making anything with butane. I'm completely organic. I make oil with coconut oil, infuse it with.
I think he's got the point, so let's go ahead.
For external use, by the way. Like
Well,
I said.
I'm going to have to doubt the accuracy of your statement. Well, I guess that's what we're here for. I feel that 12 plants is plenty adequate for the use, and that's a pretty standard figure that is provided throughout the state in different areas. And there is a process that you can go through to grow your marijuana plants indoors year-round. And it's just that people in this in the growing community in Yuba County have just chosen not to follow that rule, not to apply for a permit like the rest of us have to do.
Okay, thank you. Question on the other side.
It's having to do with the cultivation. In the measure, it specifically says that at least one plant is for the patient or the caregiver. So I thought this was for the patients. Now, who would be consuming the other plants?
Other patients. The idea behind that is called collective growing for patients. It's actually done where a person grows for other people. They actually participate in that. They come and take care of the other plants. The reason behind that is like in the city of Marysville. They don't allow cultivation. People live in apartments. They can't grow marijuana or medical marijuana where they are. So they have to have another location to do that where their prescriptions are held. The other reason why is I know every person here has been involved in caring for someone that is sick, that they love with cancer, or someone that is ill. Cultivating outside or growing plants like any other farmer who does and digs in the dirt is a very strenuous activity, especially in the summer when it's 100 degrees. People who are sick can't do that by themselves without any help. So the idea is that it is done collectively with other patients to make sure that the medicine is taken care of when other people can't do it because they're too sick.
Thank you, Michelle.
I'm going to turn around because I want everyone in this room to see my face. Because my 6-month-old grandson was just diagnosed with tubular sclerosis.
Excuse me, but do you have a question?
Yes, I do.
Oh, then please turn and face the people here and ask the question.
Okay,
Thank
so you tell me. UC Davis is sending me and my 6-month-old grandson to UCLA because they study marijuana there, because his condition does not have a cure. So they can give him a drug that 1 in 3 children will lose their hearing and go blind, but he'll live. Now, you tell me, should I do that or should I use cannabis? Because we just found all this out on Wednesday. So what do you say about that? UC Davis wants us to go to UCLA because they are studying marijuana there.
Buck, the question was directed to you.
I'm sure. What's the question?
What should we do? Should we use a drug that 1 in 3 makes my child go blind and deaf, or should we try cannabis?
Well, you have available to you marijuana that you can grow to use as with a script that's provided by a doctor. So I'm not sure what you're.
Not in your county, we can't, unless we have a whole building and $10,000 to build it.
Let's let Mr. Weckman answer the question.
Well, he's not doing it.
Yes, excuse me. Continue, sure.
There is a permit process for you to have an operation to grow the marijuana you need. And you should follow that process just like the rest of us do to build a house or to do anything else. You need to follow the law.
And when you need Vicodin for a pain pill, you go to the doctor and you get it. You don't have to build a $40,000 bill.
You've had your opportunity to appreciate that. Yes, sir. On the other side.
Ms. Parsons, my question is to you. I want to make sure I heard you say something earlier. I wonder if I heard it correctly. Did you say you were cured of Crohn's disease from using marijuana?
Right now, my GI system, when they do it, the tests every 6 months up and down, there's absolutely no sign of Crohn's disease anymore.
Do you still smoke marijuana?
I don't smoke marijuana.
Do you take marijuana?
No, I do. I use CBDs all the time. Right now, actually, because I can't cultivate plants, I'm back using oil that I have to purchase at $1,000 a month. So I'm super lucky that we can afford that.
Okay, so the marijuana you don't have no THC in it?
Correct.
Over here, please. Yes, sir.
I want to ask you, we have in hemp and marijuana as a plant with thousands of uses, hundreds of medicinal uses, it's renewable. We can use right here, we can put our farmers to work. Just about all the materials in this room can be recyclables, non-toxic, made with hemp. It could effectively save our economy, give us the freedom because we have these companies overseas creating all these products. We are so incredibly dependent. Then we have this medicine, which we have cannabinoids throughout our body.
And can you get your question, please, quickly?
Was God wrong when he made the cannabis?
No.
I want a yes or a no.
They're going to ask the question. They're going to answer your question. Hang on. Go ahead.
Yes. The Sutter Farm Bureau has taken a position opposing measures A and B. I don't think I need to add to their position on this. That's the Farm Bureau for our county.
So, Sir Buck,
thank
do
you.
you think God was wrong?
Thank you. You've asked your question.
You didn't answer it.
You answered your question. Next man on the other side, please. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm retired military, 30 years. They're obeying the law, they're not doing what they fought for. But I had people get on marijuana, and when they was on marijuana, why did they switch to a higher drug? And I had to kick them out of the Air Force. And in Singapore, they brought marijuana in Singapore, and it got so bad in Singapore, the military, that the guy got elected during the...
Can you ask the question, please? Can you please ask the question? Excuse me, you've asked your question, I believe, so go ahead.
Sir, actually...
Okay, thank you. We've heard your question, and they're going to give you an answer. Thank you very much.
They went to a higher drug.
Thank you. Go ahead, ladies. Michelle or Mickey?
Did they use alcohol before they used marijuana? No. Or did they smoke tobacco or sugar?
No.
Coffee?
No.
No, none of them drank coffee, drank alcohol? I have no idea. That's incredible. They just used marijuana and they've never used any other substance prior in their life.
Yeah, thank you very much. We're going to have the question on this side. Sorry about that.
Are you saying that these people never ever used any?
Mickey, I don't think you. Thank you for your answer.
Anyway, theory's been disproven.
Yes, sir. Go ahead and ask your question, please.
The question that I'm going to ask them is going to be made far more ironic because of the house that we all sit in right now. We're basically, when you look around, we're seeing...
Ben, can you hold on a second?
Sure.
You better call the sheriff. Call the sheriff. We're fine.
We're fine, thank you very much. Okay, let's go ahead and ask your question.
I think this is really important. It really strikes to the heart of why we're all here right now. All right, my question's made really ironic due to the fact that we're all sitting here in the house of God. And more ironic due to the fact that we said a prayer earlier in the name of Jesus. Jesus was on this earth, and from what the Bible that I read, he healed the sick, and he was persecuted by the government and persecuted by the higher-ups in society. And he went around and healed the sick. From what I see, people like Michelle, people like Mr. Martin, are healing the sick. And I'd like to ask you, here's my question.
We need your question.
Based on that, sitting here in the house of God, you all are standing in the way of these people trying to heal the sick. Does that not draw parallels to you all about what Jesus went through? Are you not?
Okay, thank you for your question. Gentlemen?
Put it in my context,
Okay,
please, when you answer.
they're going to answer your questions.
I'd
Okay.
like it entered in
Thank
my
you.
context,
Thank
not
you.
your own. if
Thank
it's
you.
applying. So,
They have an opportunity to answer your question. Go ahead.
Sure, I'll repeat the question.
No. We're sitting.
He didn't ask the question I asked.
Well, I think you've taken up enough time already. I think he's
It's
asked.
an important question.
Well, we understand.
Just tell me no.
Yes.
No, I don't agree.
Okay, so the basic question from what he's talking about, we're sitting here in the house of God, why can't we follow God's rules to legalize marijuana?
Why are they standing in the way of us trying to heal the sick as Jesus did?
Thank you.
We're
We're done with your question. Thank you. Okay.
Well, the basic problem is we're not standing in the way of what's best for society. I would tell you again, I think that there are people that benefit from marijuana. I think it should be available through the state so that you eliminate all the profit motives, because most of the marijuana being sold in California it's a joke if you think it's medicine. It's not.
You sound like the Romans, sir.
Thank you. Are you done with the wrong question? On the other side, yes. Can you speak into the microphone a little bit, Laura? That's it.
Mickey, as far as medical marijuana goes, from my understanding, in Colorado, they actually sell weed, all right?
Yes, sir.
And mainly because they include recreational marijuana.
Yes, sir.
And from my understanding, that is their main product right now. That's where they get most of their sales. And the problem is riffraff, it attracts, all right?
Can you ask a question, please?
And the question is, what assurances can you give this community that the same thing's not going to happen here? Where they're resell, they're buying and resell.
Okay, thank you very much. Mickey?
Well, I can give you the same assurances as Walgreens gives that, the oxycodone that they provide isn't being resold on the streets too. We don't justify our society by the bad behavior of the few. As far as adult use, cannabis use goes, for some people, drinking a beer at the end of the day is good. For other people, it's not. For some people, enjoying some cannabis at the end of the day is a better option for them. Who are we as a society to tell people what they can and cannot do to take the edge off at the end of the day? We have all sorts of things in our society that we allow for, whether it's a cigar or a bottle of whiskey.
Let Mickey answer, please.
Well, there is actually medicinal uses. It's not one or the other. It can be both. Freedom is what it is.
Do you have 10 more seconds?
Oh, I do have 2 more seconds. I think, there's obviously medical efficacy to cannabis, but I also, think that, if a person, decides that cannabis is a better option than alcohol than them, then they should have that right too. We're all adults here.
Okay, next question from the yes side.
My question is for Mr. Weckman.
Speak into the microphone.
And for Mr. Morgan. I'm a Vietnam veteran. I'd like to welcome you home and thank you for your service. My question is, if the cultivation and the sale of medical marijuana to help people be relieved of their medical conditions raised enough revenue to eradicate the cartels from coming into our country and growing all these illegal grows and raising billions of dollars, tax-free dollars, if it could eradicate it, would you change your view on the medical marijuana?
I don't know that I would change my view on medical marijuana. I would tell you again that that term is, in my opinion, if you had to define what medical marijuana is.
Did you hear my question?
Yeah, I think he heard the question, so let him answer.
Maybe I didn't.
About medical marijuana and raising enough funds to
the revenue
let me clarify the question that you. Thank you. The question is that is there going to be enough money from if there was enough money that was raised from the sale of medical marijuana to eradicate all the cartels out of this country? Would you support it?
You know, the problem isn't the cartels anymore. We've got 50,000 cultivation sites in California now selling pot to the whole United States. So the biggest problem with the medical marijuana program in California has been so badly abused. If it was just about providing something to help people, there wouldn't be a problem. It's been so abused, it's all about money, and the problem is for every person you help, there's probably 50 to 100 that are harmed. So I don't know that I will ever change my mind on medical marijuana. The cartels are going to be here forever. I think the reason that if there is a problem with the war on drugs saying it's failed is because we never did anything to prevent it. It's like a three-legged stool. That's supply, treatment, and rehabilitation and prevention. We've never done anything to prevent it with kids. Those are the guys that are getting hurt. And while you served in Vietnam, I served before you in the Philippines, but I managed to squeeze in between wars. But it bothers me that we're sending veterans, we're sending people in foreign lands, and while their kids are getting annihilated here at home.
From the other side of the room. Thank you very much for your question.
Question for Mike. Are you familiar with the research that Dr. Andrus at Harvard Medical School has done on the effects of marijuana on the brain? Have you read any of her reports?
I've read a lot of research. I can't quote that specific thing, but you know, the one thing I can tell you about research is that for most research, you can find research that will oppose that research, and most research is very relative and subjective to who's doing the research.
She is worldwide renowned in her field.
Excuse me, but I think have you answered the question?
I was just asking if whether or not he had maybe not seen it as important as her research has been.
Mickey, you have 30 seconds left.
There's been a lot of research done on marijuana, and you know, like I said, you know, you can make an argument for and against based on who's doing the research and what their objective is with that research.
But a worldwide authority wouldn't.
There's a lot of worldwide authorities.
We're going to cut that off because we're not into the discussion on we want the answers. And question over here.
Sure. I'm an OEFIF veteran. VA prescribed me 32 pills a day of opiates and everything else to the point where it shut down my kidneys. They wanted dialysis. They wanted everything else. It was causing dementia where I couldn't remember what day it was, where it was going. My wife took me off of that because I couldn't remember what was going on.
And your question, please.
Why are you telling everybody that I can't get my cannabis here? I have to go and find places to buy it. I can't grow it inside my house due to I can't afford the electrical bills. So you're telling me that it's better for my body to shut down and me to be drugged out of my mind.
And your question? Okay. Did you guys get the question?
I'm not telling you that. I think opiates are a major problem, and I do think that there are people like you that can benefit from using cannabis. I just don't like the fact that you can go from 2% to 96% edibles, vaping, smoking, and all of it is called medical marijuana. So I don't know in what form you use it, but no, I'm not telling you that. I think you should be able to get it.
But you can go from 5 milligrams to 60 milligrams of oxycodone. What's the difference between a pharmaceutical and something natural, and how much of it you need to take for your body?
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your question. On the other side of the room, speak up into the microphone.
Can anybody hear me?
No, speak into the microphone. Speak into the microphone. Thank you.
I haven't heard anybody here talk about nutritional healing. About 20-some years ago, there was a book put out by James and Phyllis Ball called Nutritional Healing. Very thick book, comprehensive, tells about every malady you could think of.
Question, please.
The question is, why is it nobody's talking about nutritional healing? Do we have to have pharmaceutical drugs? I hate pharmaceutical drugs. Whether legal or illegal, the drug doesn't know whether it's legal or illegal.
All right.
And they kill people to the tune of hundreds of thousands a year.
Thank you. Thank you. They need to answer your question now. So go ahead, Mickey or Michelle, your answer, please. Well, you should come over to this side. You're in the wrong line. Okay. They'll address it. Thank you very much. Okay. Okay. We gotta go now. Two minutes, gotta go. Michelle or Mickey, please, you have an answer to that.
Okay.
You're right. I definitely agree with nutritional healing, and I do that also. I have a very strict diet with Crohn's disease, and I do understand that a lot. But right now we're trying to figure out the issue with Measure A and Measure B. But on another topic, another day, I think that we could definitely discuss it. And afterwards, I'd love to talk to you about it because I actually do that.
There's actually an amazing book that Dr. Andrew Weil just put out that does cover a lot of marijuana and nutritional healing and how they coincide with one another. Dr. Andrew Weil is authority on nutrition and cannabis, so I think you would benefit from checking out.
And on this side?
Okay, my question is for Mr. Morgan. Article 10 of the Constitution says, in the Bill of Rights, says the power is not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. You said federal law trumps state law. Do you believe that?
Actually, of course, in some cases it does. But, you know, to give it, what you're saying is that the local authority should have the ultimate rule. I think that's your statement there. Okay, but if you'll recall, maybe you don't realize it, in 1996, when the Compassionate Use Act was passed in the state of California, Yuba County, and by far the majority of the rural counties in the state of California, did not vote that in. It was voted down in this county, Sutter County, and surrounding counties. So if we want to go by local rule, Yuba County has been opposed to medical marijuana.
Yeah, I let him answer the question, please. Let him answer the question, please.
So if you want to go by what you're saying, which I know it's a complicated issue, but in reality, Yuba County voted down the Medical Marijuana Use Act in 1996. So we're being forced to follow something that the state of California and other counties pushed it down our throat.
And that's all. Folks. Yes, ma'am.
Just a point of clarification and information. 83% of the cities and counties in California ban their pot shops. And for your information, federal law is the supreme law of the land. Case in point. My question, I understand, I see from your banner up here, vote yes on A is going to regulate, you're going to collect taxes, you're going to control. My question is, how is regulating, controlling, legislating going to change in any way the chemical composition of marijuana, in particular, the mind-altering, long-acting, staying power, highly potent THC that is doing such damage to our children's developing brains?
You have a wonderful point, and actually the authors of Measure A have talked all about this. We've talked about it over and over again in the access of marijuana, specifically THC, to kids. That's why Measure A, in 6 different locations, talks about the fact that the gardens will be secured. They will not be accessible to minors. If you do that, the gardens can be removed. Right now, our current ordinance doesn't even have that. It doesn't have the ability to keep children locked out. And
Michelle, why have 83% of the cities and counties banned their grows?
I'm sorry, she needs to finish her answer, please. You asked your question. Thank you.
So basically, Measure A does deal with that with children, and if children are accessible to the garden, unlike the current ordinance, that means in Measure A that it can be eradicated. The current measure that we have right now only fines property owners. There's no eradication of plants, where this measure has that ability.
Follow-up question, how is this?
No follow-up question, thank you. The question over on this side of the room, please.
I'm okay with answering that if you want.
We're going to keep on going.
Gotta finish.
Go ahead.
This question is to either one of you gentlemen, and it's a two-part question. First, I want to know if you know what the U.S. government patent 6630507 is, when was it passed, and what is it? Because you are stating you have such vast knowledge of medical marijuana.
Is that your question, please?
That's my question.
Okay. All right, gentlemen.
I've heard about it, but I do not know the details on it.
Okay, can you tell me what it's related to?
Let Mr. Morgan have an opportunity to answer.
Yeah, I know about it, but I'm not sure what's in it, to be honest.
Thank you. They don't know. Thank you very much. Next question on this side. Wow. Wow. Go ahead, Dan. Go ahead, Danielle.
So earlier, I heard you mention something about raising funds. I missed the beginning of it. But you mentioned a gun buyback program. Can you clarify for me what that entailed and why you would do a gun buyback program? And if you're considering that in Yuba County to raise funds or anything about gun buyback programs?
That was a group called Purple Heart in the city of Oakland, where gun violence is pretty rampant in the inner city. And what they did was they worked with local authorities there, and they put $120,000 of their own money towards purchasing back illegal or illicit guns that were on the street, no questions asked. And the gun buyback programs have been pretty successful across the United States in urban areas where gun violence is much more prevalent in areas such as Yuba County. So it's not something that I would be promoting in Yuba County. I was just stating it as a fact of how medical cannabis dispensaries have several programs that go above and beyond selling and purchasing cannabis, that they work with their local communities to work with local food banks, they work on homeless issues, they work on, RCP in Sacramento has one called the Full Belly Backpack Program, where they provide kids and families who, on weekends, food that they can, that they don't have because they don't have school lunches and stuff like that. So it was just an example of one of the programs.
Thank you, Mickey. Next question.
Hi, I'm going to be very blunt. I will ask a question in just a second, but...
No, please ask your question now, please. Thank you.
I have to explain the question.
Then quickly, to get your questions.
I use a very small amount of marijuana and I meditate on it. I get a lot closer to God. I'm a lot more confident. I keep having to hear about how it makes people stupid. And it's annoying me because when you use a responsible amount, it makes you very creative, connects the dots and whatever. My question about it is it morally wrong for me to use marijuana for spiritual reasons because it's not medicinal? And I keep hearing about medicinal. But for me, it's really about my relationship with God.
Gentlemen, you have a question answer. Thank you for the question.
I'm not going to question your relationship with God one way or another. That's up to you and you and God.
I think that's a personal choice. And again, we don't live isolated on an island. We're in the middle of a society. Part of the problem is if you're using marijuana and it impairs your ability to drive, then you're putting the rest of us in an unsafe position, right?
Yeah, but I set aside a period of time to use it, and I know that even if I do drive with it, which I won't, I'm still about 1/3 likely to wreck it than with beer. So.
Or wine.
Roger, any other time? You got about 10 seconds. No? Okay. On the other side, please.
Hello. Thank you, Nikki, Michelle, Buck, and Roger for being up here answering questions. And for all the people that were respectful, I appreciate you answering our question. Obviously, I'm opposed. My question is, if the vote goes against you and A and B are defeated, will you respect the will of the people like the supervisors passed the law or passed the last ordinance and it hasn't been followed by a number of folks. And they were elected by the citizens of the county. So they were our elected representative, and they haven't been, nor their, I guess the last initiative or whatever they passed, hasn't been followed. Will
the authors of these bills and the supporters respect the will of the people if it's voted down.
Thank you.
If Measure A is voted down, which I mentioned in the ad hoc meetings with the Board of Supervisors when we talked about the ordinances, no, I won't cultivate because it's actually a choice of the people. And the process of the whole democratic process regarding the current ordinance was my big issue and why I chose to write Measure A. The reason why is it was passed it on an urgency of that we were in a drought, which we were in the worst drought in history, but in the same exact meeting, our Board of Supervisors sold $750,000 to the Bay Area for beautification. And then by the urgency, they actually blocked the referendum process. So for me, I didn't feel like the voters and the people of this community had the rights to do that with a petition. And so it was really important to me to make sure that we had another option.
I also think it's funny Mr. Weckman says delivery is available when delivery is also defined as a dispensary locally by state law. But, you know, yet he's somehow stating that that is an okay way of doing it.
That's all, folks. Thank you, Mickey. On this side, one more on this side, and we got two more on that side, and we're done.
This is for Buck. We know prohibition doesn't work. Prohibition has never worked. You support an ordinance that encourages environmental degradation and encourages black market criminal activity as a result of banned cultivation.
And your question, please.
My question is, how is it that you support an ordinance that promotes the very things that you're trying to get rid of in this community?
Thank you.
Well, actually, that's an opinion, and I don't agree with that opinion. Okay, we will take the instance of Colorado, for instance, where marijuana is legal there for both recreational and medical purposes. Okay, what's happening now in Colorado is individuals are buying marijuana in some whatever form at the dispensaries in Colorado and then turning it around and selling it to youth at a higher price. So, you know, no law cures everything, but the one that we have now in existence is far better than we had before, and it'll be far better than Measure A. It does need some adjustments like anything. Our Constitution is adjusted from time to time. Okay, so we make some adjustments on that makes it fair and equitable to landowners. Okay, and actually I don't see a problem with the regulations now on growing. Okay, there could be some areas where that could be adjusted, but it's consistent with other counties.
Thank you. Next question over here, and then we're going to shut it off after Danny over there. If anybody else would want to come up here and ask one more additional question. Go ahead.
My question is for Michelle. And you've thrown out the number of collecting somewhere around $1 million in order to do enforcement. And I'm wondering how you came up with the number that you're going to be able to collect $1 million.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. We actually came up with that number from the Sheriff's Department. The sheriff sent out an email saying that there was 7,000 grows in the county, which is 1 in 4 homes having more than one plant grown outside in the year of 2012 when we had a cultivation ordinance. So what we did was we take a very small percentage of that, actually 1/7 of that, which is a total of 1,055 gardens, which is less than 5% of the county cultivating, which the square miles isn't correct because it only takes 10 square feet by 10 square feet to grow a cannabis plant outside. And that's how, when we multiplied that by all different numbers, by 6, by 12, by 36, and 60, breaking it up evenly, the total revenue came up to $1,168,250. So actually, it has the ability to raise more money than that depending upon how many patients choose to cultivate medical cannabis under Measure A.
So if somebody doesn't pay their fee...
Thank you very much for your question, and I think she gave you your answer, and we have to move on. Yes, sir.
Mr. Morgan, how can you sit up there and say that you believe marijuana should remain a Schedule I substance, which means that it has no accepted medical value in the United States, and in practically the same sentence tell this veteran who was up here that you agreed with his use of medical marijuana based on his doctor's recommendation to use his PTSD when opiates were killing you. How can you say that? How can you say that there
Okay,
is no accepted
thank you.
medical
Yeah, I think he gets the drift of your
and
question.
yet this
Roger.
is accepted?
Mr. Morgan?
Good question. The answer is they can't get it in a consistent form. If you want legal marijuana, you can buy Marinol in pill form, but legal medicines have to have known compounds, known dosage, known potency, has to be reproducible in a uniform manner. And if you look at what's being sold today, take a look at what's being sold as edibles, as smoke, as dabs, as vape. It goes from River City, Phoenix, goes from 14.7% to 96%. And they can't take it out of Schedule 1 and put it in Schedule 2 because there's no way to authenticate the Schedule 1 drug.
Schedule 1 says there's no accepted medical.
Thank you very much. I think he's answered your question. Thank you. Next question on this side, please.
Their opinions are accepted.
The question on this side.
My question is for Michelle, because I already asked a question.
Speak into the mic, please.
I can't hear you, sweetheart. I'm so sorry. Can you point it down? It's really hard, I know. These things are really difficult. Thank you.
Today's internet showed a story. Okay. Today's internet showed a story from Babe Ruth, Louisiana.
Okay.
And it was about Mojo.
About what? I'm sorry.
Mojo.
I don't know what that is.
Well, let me hit you to it. Because I know a lot about the.
Let's go quickly with your question.
Okay, it's a synthetic herbal incense used as an alternative to marijuana. Okay, one person died after doing whatever he did to it.
Quickly, your question.
Okay, that's what I'm getting to. And it said both of them from back them out. So under your ordinance, how do you know somebody's not going to go ahead and do this and kill more people?
Michelle?
I'm pretty sure that you just told me that that was not marijuana.
Yeah.
That was a...
So that's what I'm saying. How are you going to be guaranteed the voters of Marysville that they're not going to do Mojo in Marysville?
Well, Mojo isn't medical marijuana, so I'm quite confused because no one in the history of mankind has ever overdosed. More people die from peanut allergies or over drinking water. So I'm quite confused by what you're asking me, but I actually do know what you're talking about because at the fire department I saw that I know about that actually, but it has nothing to do with medical marijuana or Measure A.
Synthetic marijuana is the product of the prohibition of marijuana. I mean, that's what you get when you tell people that, you know, you're going to drug test.
Let him finish his answer, please. He's got about 10
So
seconds.
synthetic marijuana is the result of prohibiting marijuana. So actually, your opposition created that problem.
It does say cannabinoid is
Are you done on this table with the questions? Okay, thank you. Next question on this side, please. Thank you.
My question is for Mr. Weckman or Mr. Morgan. If Measure A or Measure B passes, do either one of you gentlemen plan to challenge it in court constitutionally?
Would I challenge it in court? Is that your question?
Yes.
No.
Okay.
Mr. Morgan?
Any, Mr. Morgan? Would you challenge it in court?
That takes money, and I don't have any, but let me ask you a question. What happens if in November we get a new president that decides to enforce the law? Then all this stops?
Look, we need to move on. Yes, ma'am, on this side.
Yeah, why is the rights of a few growing and harvesting, selling, dispensing medical marijuana more important than my right as a taxpayer to pay for the cost of regulating potential loss of property value due to growing marijuana next door to me and such?
Currently, right now, I don't know if you're aware, but you're actually paying for that enforcement. Every taxpayer of Yuba County is through the taxes that you pay. And so actually what Measure A does is it keeps the same enforcement and increases it with we will be able to deal with that and eradicate illegal grows and the grows that you're having a problem with. But what people need to understand is that when we talk about people's setbacks, it says 1,000 feet, 10 football fields. So I'm quite concerned, are people really feeling threatened by a plant that's 1,000 feet away?
Another good question is very few people ride bikes, but we pay for bike lanes as well, correct? Why am I putting my money? Because I don't ride a bike.
Why is your rights more important than mine?
He's answering the question. You have, I think we'll all know that one.
15%.
Okay, let's, you have
That's
a
how our
question,
society works.
That's out over here. Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question. Whether or not you guys know that what we use on the natural plant is a natural plant that's been being used for 5,000 plus years for medical purposes. It was the very first plant cultivated by man.
What's your question, please?
My question is do you use any herbal substances? Do you use any essential oils at this time? Do you use any herbs that didn't come from a pharmacist for your health?
Go ahead.
A drug dealer named Walgreens.
This is a large issue. Recently, the University of Davis conducted a study on long-term marijuana use. The results of that came back as that children, actually that use long-term marijuana use in adulthood, came out in a lower social status than their parents. It also indicated that they had problems with antisocial behavior. They became less productive. They had problems with maintaining finances, and they had problems with emotionally with their at home. So continual marijuana use, high uses by people, is a problem for society, and we quite can't afford to have another non-productive dependent class. Okay, there's only so much that we can carry. So yes, it is relevant.
Thank you. Danielle?
So this is a quick question for both of you. In your opinion, what impacts, good or bad, would Measure A and B have in the community of Yuba County on public safety, home values, quality of life, public safety, with how you hear all the stories about people breaking onto the grow sites, or burglars and that kind of stuff, and the armed guards and the AKs and that kind of thing. So what's your opinion?
Well, Measure A is actually designed to deal with that. The money for Measure A can be used by the Sheriff's Department. Right now, I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but our current ordinance gave no budgeted money to the Sheriff's Department, which means they're not dealing with criminals. Yes, he had 18 criminal search warrants this year, but that was out of his regular budget. And so what this does is provides funding through the collection of fees to the general fund for the sheriff to ask for, where he can actually hire more officers and deal with illegal grows and cut down on crime. Regarding to property values, I just want you to know that when in 2012, the property values actually went up by 20%. And so the concern about that is statistics don't show that that's an issue.
I also don't see a lot of robbery of burglaries or liquor stores or wine grape growers because they are regulated. Okay, growing wine or hops. You don't see a lot of those because why? Because they're regulated.
Okay, thank you. This guy over here.
Yes.
Ma'am, this is your last question.
Yes. You quoted Mr. Weckman, you quoted different facts on teenagers being abused and mental problems caused from marijuana. Could you please quote the facts on alcoholism, teenage alcoholism, adult alcoholism, and the problems and the deaths caused yearly and daily, minutely by alcoholics and child alcoholics, drunk drivers
Thank you.
across the nation?
Mr. Weckman?
Thank you.
I'm not going to comment on a situation that we're not addressing tonight. We're addressing marijuana.
Next question. The lady in green is the last question on this side. We have one more on this side, then we're done. This 9:15, you guys done a great job, everybody who's been in the room. Thank you. Question, please.
Yes, I want to clarify, I want to make sure, Mr. Martin, because Michelle answered my question. I respect that. I trust she'll stand by her word. If A and B are defeated, this is the last we hear of it. Hopefully there's no more. We can move on in this county. Whether it passes or fails, we can move on. Mr. Martin, if it fails, A or B, are you done fighting this fight in Yuba County, or are you going to continue to try to change the current ordinance or come up with a new...
Is that your question?
Yeah, are you going to stop?
Mr. Martin, your answer, please.
Am I going to stop advocating for medical cannabis?
In Yuba County,
Never.
In Yuba County, will you accept the will of the voters?
Actually, I think that we're gonna win. So, I think that there's gonna be great turnout. I think Donald Trump's gonna bring a lot of people to the polls. I think Bernie Sanders has a lot of younger people excited. I think hands down we're gonna get our 15%.
And Gene, I'm sorry. I just want to clarify. I thought when you asked me that question, does that mean that I'm going to respect the current ordinance that stays and not cultivate? And that's what I'm saying. But no, in no way will I ever stop activating and working my ability to find and use a medication that's changed my life. There's absolutely no way will I ever do that, because the truth is that I wouldn't be okay without it, and I think that is my right. And so to actually say, will I not cultivate? Yes, I'll respect the issue, but to continue to advocate for cannabis, yes, of course I will.
Thank you. Go ahead. Speak to the microphone, though.
Mr. Weckman, I come bearing statistics, because that's what this debate was supposed to be. The back and forth of what you think. I don't really hear what you think. 72%
Do you have your question, please?
of our children consume alcohol. Will your group pick up banning alcohol in Yuba County when you're done with cannabis?
Mr. Weckman, please.
Actually, what am I now, Colleen? 72?
72%.
Pardon?
That's from SAD.
Okay. Well, you asked me a question, whether I would pursue it.
Will you pursue banning
I'm trying to answer.
alcohol?
Let him answer your question, please, ma'am.
Okay. I'm 72 years old, and so I have some other things to do as far as winding up some family affairs and spending some time with my family, my 5 married children, and my 20-some-odd grandchildren, and helping them out. So, this is probably my last significant political effort.
Yes, sir, Frank?
Yes, Michelle. In your the word for this skips me. Your bill, your ordinance.
Yes, in Measure A.
Yeah, Measure A. How does it provide for downstream for changes to fees, changes for various things that the county might find as inflation kicks in and your ordinance is in? How does the county go about doing that?
There's nowhere in the measure does it say that the county, after 2 years when the state of California starts to enact AB 266, that they cannot continue the fee, increase the fee, or actually have a tax that the voters can choose on, because in AB 266 right now, it specifies specifically that any county that has cultivation can go back and readjust that at that time.
Is that all aspects of this, or what parts of this are frozen?
I think she's done with her question, your answer. Yes. Yes, ma'am. Last question. Speak into the microphone, please.
Okay. Measure A prohibits anyone from filing a complaint that lives over 600 feet from a marijuana grow. What is the purpose of that restriction?
The purpose of that is that anybody who lives further than 2 football fields away from a garden that is compliant, that you can't see, isn't being affected by that. You can't smell a garden from that distance. The other thing is what you have to understand is that a garden that can be seen, plants that can be seen, are not compliant, and therefore they are enforceable under the section that I read you for code enforcement and the sheriff's department. And so the complaint-driven mechanism is only for gardens that are compliant, that have paid their registration fees, and that we make sure they're only their neighbors, because people don't deserve to be harassed on a continual basis because they're exercising their rights for the Constitution that we've chosen with Prop 215.
That's it. Thank you very much. Listen, I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. And certainly, panelists, I thank you all for being here and giving us some perspective that perhaps a lot of us have never seen before, because it's really important that in a democratic society that we hear all views, whether we like them, we don't like them, we can take some bitter pills or not take the bitter pills, whatever, but we at least are able to have freedom of speech. Here, here. That's as Tea Party members, and of course I talk about this 24/7 on the radio show, the Constitution is an important document that needs to be protected. And in this room tonight, you can see why we need to protect the Constitution, especially the First Amendment, because everybody had freedom of speech here tonight. And yes, we've had rules and regulations, but we all followed and complied, and we were respectful to the argument. And I really want to thank you very much for that. I'd also like to thank the Tea Party Patriots, Sutter Tea Party Patriots, for being here to the talk. And I know that next year, or maybe in another 6 months, we'll have another one of these great marijuana debates. So thank you for being here tonight. And be safe on the way home. And listen to my radio show. It's on right now.